ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to come out and join us together for this very, very special occasion. Composing, yes, they sit down and they compose, and then people play, and it's very nice. But the process of composition is much more difficult to record not in terms of recording it in a video, okay, or recording it in a cassette, because it is a long, hard, and continuous process. And that fascinates me for two reasons, personally. And this is all the more reason why I'm here to listen and find out about it. I want to know how it is done, okay, how, why it is here and not here, and why this is repeated 5 times and not once. And there has to be an explanation, even if it is purely a technical or an aesthetic explanation. And the second part is relatedly unrelated. I'm a huge fan of pop music. I adore pop music. My initial education in life was pop. I know deeply and extremely well the pop of 1960 and 1970. And I spent a lot of time understanding, to the extent that I can, of how it was done. And I have fantastic help in the process of doing that with our good friend here, Andy Walter.
May I keep on the mic for you?
Done some of the major stars in the pop world.
Thank you.
Okay. And what I finally saw and understood is that the idea that these long-haired, drunk, let's say debilitated morons come and go janga, 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 and that's it. No, it isn't. It is months of extremely hard work. They spend hours on one note. They can spend 3 months in recording one song. Okay, now go back and look at Beethoven's 7 leather-bound booklets of his enormous struggle to get 3 notes right, okay? And no one should dare to say that pop music is simply let's say, spontaneous and a little bit of rubbish. You might not like it, perfectly all right. I don't like a lot of Mozart's dances, okay? I'm not more than rubbish, okay? But equally, what I am delighted to see here is to see the process of composing. And like as I always knew and suspected, it is a long, deliberate, and hard work. So collectively, we have to thank these guys because they don't sit down and they say, yes, and they play stuff. No, it is. And in the same way that this is an aspect of composing, also please remember, pop, okay, is also a long and hard work. And we're having today a presentation exactly on that.
Thank you, it's nice to see you all. First, can you hear me? Yes. Good. If you can't, and I'm not doing right with the microphone, just say. I'll start, before we start with the music examples, to say a few words about how I start to write a piece of music. I've been composing since I'm 6 years old, and I had my first pieces for orchestra played when I was 8 or 9 years old, so it's been, you would think that by now I would know how to do it, but what happens when you start a new piece, it's this white page. And there is no answer to this white page, and that's what makes it incredibly frightening and interesting. Because if not, after 40 years you will be bored. And I would say sort of it's quite simple how it starts, but it's not, because it depends on what type of piece. The biggest difference between pieces, I would say that art is about contrasts. And so the first difference between type of pieces that you write is between pieces that are single movement and pieces that are in multiple movements. if you have several movements, the contrast can be in between movements. So you have something fast, something sad, but different movements. If you got one movement, it has to all happen in one movement. And an etude, like this one, is a one movement piece. But also, what specifically, an etude is a short piece. Before I start to talk about this specific etude, it's part of a cycle of etudes that I've decided, I think 5 years ago. Well, I always wanted to do it. I love Chopin etudes. I think that they are the most magical etudes, that's the best of all etudes, in the sense that making 24 etudes that are all extraordinary is a great achievement. You have beautiful etudes of Scriabin, you've got etudes of Rachmaninoff, but not 24. And so I always thought that the trick to do that would be first to start to write one, because it took me a long time to have the guts to do it, but also to spread it, so that each etude by itself would be great. So I write an etude, then I write something else, and then I write back an etude. And so you see that this etude is opus 66, number 6. But actually, sort of when I wrote it, it came after opus 66, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And by that time, I was already doing pieces that were opus 80, because in between, I wrote other pieces. So when I was asked to write this piece for the competition, I asked straight away Annabella if it was okay if it was part of my etude cycle, because it's something that I'm fascinated about. And she said yes. And then I came and I went down, because I compose upstairs. I live in London. It's a house and it's 3 floors. I compose on the top floor. And so I went downstairs and I said to my wife, I'm doing my 6th etude. And so it's going to be opus 66, number 6. And she said, 666, oh, Mephisto. I thought, oh, that sounds good. And I thought, and Mephisto for me, straight away, I didn't think about the Faust from Goethe. For me, it's another book. It's The Master and Margarita by Bulgakov, because I love that book. And then I started to think, and we are going to come to the piece, of what to do with that. Each etude has got, an etude is, often people think that an etude is a brilliant work that is an etude in a way for the performer. So it deals with a technical problem, and you have sort of like a etude of Chopin inserts or arpeggio or something like that. But it's also, as well, it's an etude for the composer. It's difficult to write a great work that lasts 3 minutes. And that is very intense, and is in a way monothematic, because the essence of life is change. And without change, there is boredom. So how do you deal with that problem? Now, the previous etudes, I started with the first etude, the ostinato etude, dealt mostly with ostinatos. Second etude I called half moon, because the left hand goes all the time over the right hand, so it's like a half moon. And then you got one that is arpeggio etude. This one, I thought, okay, it's Mephisto, and it will finish the first part of my cycle, because I'll do four times to get to my 24. I'll do 4 opuses that are, each one contains 6 pieces. And I thought, how do I start? And I thought, okay, it needs to start with something very brilliant, but also devilish. And I thought, okay, because when I started to compose, or something like that, when I was about 7 or 8, I can't remember, I thought that I invented the 12. I'd never heard about and I thought it was, and I started to compose like that, and then someone told me that I didn't invent it. That was very disappointing, and I composed using this, my own method of 12 songs, until I was about 17, and then I incorporated with other things. But I thought for this Mephisto that I would start with something that was 12 tone, and that would be very devilish. So that's what the first thing that I wrote on the first day, at the first hour, was that. And I thought, okay, that's okay, I should start. Well, Well, as Andrew was saying, it didn't come that easily. I had to choose the notes. But the first concept was it was going to be fast, and this was going to create tension. After I did that, I decided to... so I moved forward, and now Luca will play the next bit. So I thought... And I thought, okay, good introduction. Now what do I do next? And I thought, okay, the next, that's like an opening. And I'm going to do a set of strange walls that is, instead of being in 3 like waltzes are, it's 3 but then 2. And I thought, okay, that's my idea, my first start. And so I build on this idea, and sort of maybe Luca, you can play sort of the beginning. So that's on next example. The number 3, yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Yes. And so I think that if you look well in all the history of music, there's something in common with all the bad composers between them, and the good composers between them, is that the bad composers are symmetrical. And you won't find any good composer in any time that is symmetrical, because things change all the time, and that's what makes them not boring. And for me, I'm fascinated with rhythm, and so I thought already this type of thing. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But if you do, on top of that, you create a theme that is also 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, it's a bit boring. So I thought, on top of that, I put something that is also with a different meter, but instead of being 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, it's so I'll count 1, 2, 3, and Luca will play. So so you got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. But of course, what you've got is you've got at the bottom the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So 3 plus 2, 5. And on top of that, you got 3 and 4. So 3 plus 4, 7. So they move, but they move not at the same time. And it creates a feel of suspension. There is something else that I want to say about what you could hear. It's but I'll develop it a bit more later in the talk. Is that for me the change when you've got one bar that is 3 and one bar that is 2, for example, or one bar that is 3 and one bar that is 4. One of the bars is a bar that is active and one that is passive. The explanation of art, one of the best explanations of art that I've ever found was by Freud, that he said that it's about creating tension and release. And I think that's the best explanation. It's better than philosophers like Schopenhauer or things like that. I think that it's very true to art. And so, for example, structure, or there are things that are objective in music, like sort of length of phrases. And things that are in an action will be what Luca will show. If, let's say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, you could imagine that the 1, 2, 3 is a tension and the 1, 2 is a release. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But the opposite, you could do 1, 2, 2, 3. So for example, for the walls there, you could do, the first time we do the tension in the 3, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 2, 3, 1, 2. But you could also do the opposite. Imagine 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Now, these are equally right interpretations. When I was young, I remember that people said, some teachers that I had that were not very good maybe, said, well, Bach, he didn't write any dynamics because, of course, at this time, people were very cultured, really cultured, so they no need. And I always thought it's just not clever. You can try dynamics in case two things will work equally well. So like this, you've got the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. What is important is that one is active, one is passive. But whether it's active, passive, or passive, active, both work. So I can write. What I write will be like the word of God, and nobody will do the opposite. And you have a problem of notation in that. That's a discretion. So now that we had this, I talked about this idea of walls with the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then on top of that, the 3 and the 4. Maybe Luca, you can play again these two, sort of just the left hand. Start. And then just the right hand. Okay? And now, let's see what gets together. One other thing, sort of that in the past, or essentially, as I was saying, contrast is an element essential in art. But in the classical period, even the Romantic period, the contrast was mostly, it's not entirely true, in terms of time. So you had something and then something else that would be in contrast with it. Even if there are exceptions, great composers like Bach or Mozart did different things as well. But for me, it's essential, the contrast at the same time, like you could see with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, but also in this case, you can hear the right hand, the top part, is very lyrical. And it feels like it floats, it glides. But for you to have the feel of glide, you need to have the dryness that is the left hand. Because then you feel it. It's like anything in life is in a matter of contrast. You get to this hole and you're cold because it's hot outside. And the same for that. So, but now let's come back to the beginning. So because we are still at the beginning, and as Andrew was saying, that seems to, I talked quickly about it, but it took me probably about, I don't know, 10, 15 hours to find the right notes on these two ideas. So now, when I've done that, I found the walls, in my head, I imagine how it would go one after the other. So. So when I did that, I thought, okay, I've got a little problem of the transition between the opening, the Mephisto, and this wall. So if you play it again, yes, that example, yes. So we've got that, yeah, dramatic, and then pam, pam, and then it stays, and for me it becomes boring there. There's something wrong there. And I say, okay, it's not working, so I'm going to try to do, instead of having this tada that stops the tension, because I think about these walls is like a release. But it doesn't work because it's, if you want to give a surprise present to someone, and you say, and you give the surprise present, it's a surprise. But if you say, aha, I'm going to give you the surprise present, it's not a surprise present anymore. So I've got the feeling that this thing, this tada, I think, okay, everyone knows that something is going to come, so it's not working. So I think, okay, let's get rid of the tada, and let's have a rest, and then start. So. Well, I think, okay. So I think, okay, let's try it like that. So I play it again in my head. And I think, okay, but this Mephisto is a bit boring. Sort of, it doesn't suit Mephisto. So if you play just the beginning, so. Okay, so there's something that disturbs me. It's the notes are okay, but somehow it doesn't feel dangerous. So I think, okay, maybe there is lacking some rhythm, rests in between. So that came after. Not like Andrew says, not that easy. So so I thought, okay, so I do this sort of matching with little stops, and it goes again, and then I'll have to have a fast thing. So now you can do that. No, I mean from the beginning. So. I think I'm pleased, so I'll do that. I do this Mephisto that is a bit broken, and then I have this mad thing, and then after that I'll have the type of waltz. So you've got, yes, from the beginning. And then transition. And then I think that I need to put something here, and then waltz. Okay, and I think, okay, it's still, I'm not convinced, and I think there's something that is not working, and I can, once I did a lecture with a scientist about composing on the scientific method, and it was fun. He was a neuroscientist from UCL, and because I said that the composition method is very similar to the scientific method, is that you've got to try to isolate the elements so that you can decide what's wrong. So you think, okay, that doesn't work. Why? So maybe it's the rhythm. So you don't touch anything else, but you try to move the rhythm. Or you think, okay, maybe it's the note. So you don't touch the rhythm, but you touch the note. So it's like science. But that's the difference with science, is that in science, you don't, I suppose, well, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but the final decision for me, it's a decision of feel. So I listen to that in my head, and I think, okay, it doesn't work. And because I feel it doesn't work, then I need to intellectually try to understand why. Because without this understanding, I cannot try to find how it's going to work. So I got to that point in the composition, I think it doesn't work, there is something weak in there. And I think, okay, so what do I have so far? So I've got a start, that's the first thing, that I call Mephisto. And then I've got this transition thing. And then I've got the waltz. And I think, okay, why doesn't it really work? And the truth is that sort of some of the things that you do, you can always explain afterwards in some way, but some of the things, it's not like you decide to do something and you do it. So for example, this transition that I saw that was completely new is actually not entirely new, because if you look, if you play just a little bit of, you know, of the waltz, the ta. Stop. Yeah, just that again. Da, 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 di. And then if you listen to the transition, but slowly, so that's the same. Da, 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 di, da, di, di. So without being conscious, I was reproducing the same thing, but much faster. But they've got too much to work one after the other because they negate each other. And at that point, I think, okay, somehow, it's not working for me, and it's a matter of right place. And so it's not the best place to have the Mephisto theme. That actually I need to start with the waltz, and then have a transition, and then try the Mephisto. So then I try that. and of course, it took me longer to do all the middle bits, but it would take hours if I did tell you everything that comes in between. I thought that at this point in the talk, because that's this part of the talk is about how it all starts. So it's the beginning, sort of the first, if you are very, very lucky, the first day, and if you are less lucky, it could be the first week or worse of work. But when I've got that, I'm somehow happy, because if you think, there's something that I try not to think too often about. No great composer, not the greatest, not Bach, not Mozart, not Beethoven, writes only masterpieces. It doesn't exist. It's not human to write only masterpieces. So the question is why? And I think that, sadly, it depends on the beginning. If you got the first 30 seconds of music that are great, a great master, it will be a masterpiece. You won't find pieces by Beethoven, Mozart, or Schumann, or whoever, that starts well and then suddenly they're not very good. But if your main theme is not extraordinary, whatever you do with it, it's not going to be great, and that's a problem. That's why it's so essential to have the beginning, and it's why it's that part is the part that I try to completely not think that no one can do really only great work. So if I've done 3 or 4 pieces that in a row that I'm very pleased about, I know that at some point there will be one that I'm not so pleased about. That there is nothing. I mean, if you think about it, it's like death. It will come. There's just. But you don't think about it every day, because if not, you don't live. And if I thought about it, I wouldn't compose, same way. So at this point, Luca will play all the pieces from the beginning to the end, so that you have the beginning, and then we'll see what we've done with the end. And after that, I'll do the second part of this lecture, which is not how you start, but how you continue. And now I'm going to turn the pages for Luca. Turn it off. Yeah, got it. No, actually, I can't get it. Yeah. Yeah. Well done, Luca. Very easy piece. Everyone will agree, especially the people that played it at the competition. But now we are going to talk about what I call the lecture, actually, sort of the Metamorphoses of Mephisto. So it's basically variation on that theme. But before we do that, we are going to do this example that we call 9A, or 9A. That is a little explanation about my world of what I'm interested in, again, in rhythm. So it's this sort of three beats in a bar, 4 bars in a beat, and different type of rhythm. So if Luca, you play this example, the first 4 bars. So I took this example because that's what it's almost the end of the piece, so you still have it in your mind. And it seems to be, when you listen to it, just play 2 bars, it seems very easy. So it's just a nice tune. So very simple, but actually it's not that simple. So the first part of it is that you got 3 beats in a bar and then 4 beats in a bar. So I'll count so that you can see what I mean. So it's 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. Sorry. 1.
Top voice only, yeah?
Top voice only. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah. And then so you got 3 and then 4. So da da de de da de da da. So 1, 2, 3. Da 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 da. But I think on the left hand, I write not 3 and 4, but I write 4 and 3. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And on top of that, you got actually we didn't do that before, but you got the middle part. That if you hear it, so play it, look at, so you got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So you got going on at the same time 3 and 4, 4 and 3, and then something that is like a 2 beats per bar. And it gives a feel that's why when you hear it together, it's like such float. So if you play it again, look out. Because of all these layers. For me, there are nothing is an accompaniment in music. I had a pupil coming, composition lessons are not exactly like performing lessons. You don't sort of come every week and you play something. You need material. So you got someone coming, I say a few things, and then they go away for 6 weeks, and they come back with something, and I say other things. And that person that came to me said, well, I'm doing this piece for cello on piano, and I think that the piano is accompanying. And I said, there's no such a thing, no accompaniment. There's not, in great music, nothing is accompanying. It doesn't exist. And I was thinking, and I was telling her the story of when a few months ago I had a series of concerts with a piece of mine for orchestra, and the conductor said, so here, so where is the melody, the main melody, and things like that? And at that point there were about 8 melodies going on at the same time, because but that's something that I did when I was very young. When I was 6 or 7, or maybe I was 8, when I was at school, and then you had the school break, in between every hour you got a school break, and I had this game that I was trying to imagine melodies, putting as many melodies on top of each other. So that's a fun game, and you try to see how many you can do. It's like sort of extreme counterpoint, and I really love that, and I still do. I just do it in a more complex manner, maybe rhythmically, but it's an interest of mine. So I thought that would be a good example before we start actually. The main examples of what I call the Metamorphoses of Mephisto, which is basically sort of one of the method of composition that you would say is in development is what I would say in literature is what happens to the character. So you got a character that you meet, and through the chapter, something happens to this character. In music, it's the same, and the exception being, in literature, sort of something like the Nouveau Roman, where there was no story at all, and it happily died after sort of 10 years of, sort of, let's say, try. Nobody liked it, and it went away. In music, it didn't go away somehow, so I don't know why, but we had lots of people that sort of tried not to do anything and succeeded for a long time. But I don't believe in that. And I think that sort of often sort of the character in music is rhythm. So you've got you take something for example, you take something, you invent something that goes like that, let's say. It would be sounds sort of very similar to something, because exactly the same rhythm. But if you took the first notes that I did at the beginning and did the same note, but with different rhythm, it seems to be more remote from the theme than the second one. So in a way, sort of, we are attracted by rhythm. So the character, like in a book, it's Jeff or Marie or whatever, or Luca, is often the rhythm. And you change the notes, but you keep the same rhythm. It's not always true. So if you take, so what I thought was Mephisto at the beginning, this dissonant dot, actually sort of, maybe if you went into sort of a literary tangent, you would say that that's Mephisto when he reveals himself as being the devil, whereas sort of, usually he doesn't, because if not it wouldn't be dangerous. Mephisto is often sort of appealing. And the waltz is Mephisto is in his usual manner when you don't know that he's the devil. And so what I will show now is the different guys that this main theme of the piece comes. So the first one is how it comes the first time. Then he appears very, very briefly, and we don't even recognize him. It's with this fast theme. Here we are not even aware that it's the same person. The second time that it appears, that it's obvious, it's a bit later. Look, if you can play just the top part of that. I mean, just the top, just one line, just the top, top, top. At this time, so the first time that we had it, we had the walls at the bottom, the pam, jump, jump, and then that on top. Then, in the first Metamorphoses, I played on top, so if you play just the right hand. No, I mean the, yeah, but with both. Now, I've not changed the main theme, but apart from that, and that changed the feeling, because the first time it was sort of in a medium range, and here is very high and twinkly, but also sort of the accompaniment to it is almost like just chords, like an harmony. And because of that, I thought that if you take the accompaniment of the beginning, the first one, the word pam, jump, 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 pam, jump, I thought that that would not be enough to put that underneath this new way, because you would have something that was quite settled with something that was quite settled underneath. So I thought I need to transform this waltz thing using the same idea, but it's something that it's a waltz that transforms itself almost to an habanera. But it still has the character of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So if I count 1, 2, 3, okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it's same character, but because of the dotted rhythm tam, pam, pam, it gives something that is even more of a contrast to the very high note. So if we play it, so that's how it appears the second time, Mephisto. The third time is it's interesting. We had this talk with Lucas sort of when we rehearsed the piece last time. That's going to become a bit technical, so I try to explain it in clear terms. I'm fascinated with rhythms that are almost my trademark. Like if you put in a 3-beat bar, 4 notes, each of the notes will become 3/4. So you have what you call in music dotted quavers, and you have 4 dotted quavers in there. So, and what is interesting in that is that apart from the first one, none falls on the beat. So at the beginning of the waltz, you get a da 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 pa da 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 da. Nothing on the beat. On the beat is the left hand jump, pam pam jump jump. Now, if you keep somehow the same idea, but you make the right hand on the beat, so just play me the right hand of the new. On the left hand, off the beat, with triplets of meaning. So triplets of meaning means that you got 3 notes that goes into 4 beats. So each note is 1 beat plus a third. So the left hand becomes the one that is unsettled. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. But I keep my idea of 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, but extending it. Now, when Luca was playing it the first time, if you've got 4 notes against 3, you can have it either like that, the 4 times 3/4, and then at the bottom, sort of the 1 beat, so you got 3 beats and 4 3/4 of a beat on top. Proportion are the same if you do 4 beats and 3 times 1 and a third. Correct?
I can show maybe straight away.
Yes.
Both of them.
Yes, show both of them. Yes. And now the other one. What is interesting, when we were doing it, Luca said, oh, I'm getting completely lost after a few bars, but 10 bars after, I just can't do this rhythm. And I said, but I can't blame him. But I said, you know, Luca, it's because when you do the 3 against 4, you do it like in the first time. You do it, so you make the 4 notes like they are 3/4 of a beat, and the 3 notes like they are beats. But here, the 4 notes are each one a beat. So when you progress, and you get into sort of quarter or thirds of these beats, if you thought that a third of one beat, it's easy, but a third of a 3/4 of a beat, it starts to be very complex. So that's why he fell a bit further on, because it's at the beginning, even if it's written like that, it sounds, because 3 against 4, it's 3 against 4. So he didn't notice that he was starting to play it like it sounds somehow. But you can't, you have the feeling that the left hand are the beats, but it's not, they are not. And that gives the feeling, the right hand, but the interest for me of that variation of the theme is that I thought, okay, the first variation when it appears was higher, but instead of having the waltz at the bottom, you had the habanera at the pam, cha-cham, pam, cha-cham. And I thought, okay, what can happen next time? Especially that happened after something that was very dense and very, very fiery. Can you play maybe, Lucas, a bit that is... that. Just a little bit of that bit. So we have just that, and I thought after that, I need a complete release, but it's even more abstract and remote from the first, the one that we heard. Can you play with the second one? So the one that is the version that we just played. Okay. So, listen. No. That one. So this one is different from the first one, but I thought if I use something that is quite similar again, it will be boring. And that's the main thing, sort of the good music is the opposite of boring. It's basically the anti-boring. You've got to find the way that it's not boring. And I thought, what about if I stretch it? So everything that was 3/4 of a beat becomes 1 beat and feels like it's just on top of things. Apart from that, it becomes even higher than each version. So it's very, very twinkly, it's very high, and Luca will play it. Yes. And that's sort of, in a way, the second Metamorphosis of Mephisto, if you don't count the very, very fast one. And the next one is, well, Luca, maybe play it before we talk about it. So that one, we were talking with Luca the other day, and I said to him, so it's when you hear it, you feel it's something that is very lyrical, but the main, you had the da 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 da, they were equal notes, and here you got, for example, instead of 3/4, 3/4, 3/4, so you got sort of some 3, then followed by 5, followed by 4, 4, then 3, 5. It changes, and I said to Luca, I can explain why, and that is an interesting bit. I was talking to my father, that is an artist, and I said, if I've got to explain to a performer how to play something, there are things that are rational, that I can explain exactly why I've done that. But when I did it, I didn't necessarily think about that. But when the composition is finished, it becomes an object that is like I didn't compose it. It's just different, same thing for me to talk about Beethoven, Chopin, or my piece. there's no difference in there. And so, and my dad said it because there's a lot of things that I've been composing for 40 years, that some research that you do intellectually becomes part of you and becomes unconscious, and you don't even, you're not conscious that you are doing it when you create it. And in this part, I was thinking, why did I change the length of the note? Why are they not equal anymore? So if you play it again.
I can do slow so I can mark it.
Yes, maybe do it slowly. And I said to Luca, because the main reason is that in the beginning, when you got the first theme, as I was explaining before, it had just so many layers. So you had the three beats and 4 beats per bar alternating. At the same time, you had the walls 3 and 2. So there were just so many contrasts that it was interesting. But here, it's basically a melody that is harmonized, and you feel it like one voice actually. And if it's only one voice, the complexity must be inside the melody rhythmically, because you cannot count on complexity through comparison of something else. And that's why I've changed the length of the note so that it feels completely symmetrical. It's by very little, so when you hear it, you're not even entirely conscious that it has changed a little bit. So maybe you can play it at speed again. No, it's normal speed. Yes, and if you play the normal one. Jump, jump, jump. You see, it's not that obvious that there's a difference in the tunes. It's a little. But I was talking about that. I was when I did this lecture that I was telling you about with science on music. I had this lunch with this neuroscientist, and he told me something really interesting. That it's this idea of symmetry that you've got. That if you put an enormous square of, let's say, 4 meters by 4 meters, and you draw a line in the middle, but instead of doing it in the middle exactly, you do it, let's say, 1 millimeter to the right, everyone will feel that it is not in the middle, because you've got a feel of that's not right somehow, even it's very little. It goes both ways, so that you feel it when it's exactly right, or exactly symmetrical. And in that sense, even if it's by very little that I change this melody by fraction, we don't notice that it's not anymore symmetrical, but it's not, and because of that we are not bored and we feel that it moves forward. Now the last change of the theme comes towards the end. That it's actually was it this morning? Oh no, it was yesterday night. We were talking, and when I was saying to Luca, okay, we'll do it. That will be the example that we do. I said it's almost like a coda. And Luca was saying, but it's a bit early for a coda. And I said, well, you know, it's true. There are sort of like the codas arrive. There are 3 codas, so somehow. But this, for me, it's the beginning of the end. So it's in other words, you could call it a recapitulation. But for me, from there, it's almost inevitable. You get towards the end. So there is something of a coda for me. But so what I thought after that, it's if we do it, look, actually we played from a little bit before, so it's you got something that is very very big, very virtuosic, and then it comes. Okay, so I thought, okay, if I do again, so we are now, you know, it's a funny thing, sort of, you know, it's like in Bach or in Vivaldi or in all this music, the Baroque music, you get used to And it's true for all music. So if you do short, short, long. So you think about, I don't know, Bach violin concerto in A minor. Pam, pam, short. Pam, pam, short. And then long. Pam, pa, da, 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 dam, pam. And if it was a bad composer, he would have done pam, 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 4 times the same, and then it's death. It's really boring. But it's because you find the people like Czerny that do that all the time. All their work is like that. It's sort of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, and in Bach, Mozart, Schubert, it never happens. But I was thinking, so if you think about the Metamorphoses before, you had something very tense or something like that, and then relaxation, Mephisto comes. So it's funny to think about relaxation with Mephisto, but that's what it is. But you've done it twice, or almost 3 times, so you expect that it's going to be again, so the pa 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 pa, and so you don't want to do that. So this time, I thought, okay, I need to keep the tension. And what do you do? What variations? What I do? I kept, you remember sort of, if you do the beginning, just the left hand, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So what can you do to make it more devilish or something like that? Well, you can make it very hard for Luca. We multiply the speed by 2. So they were 1 beat each of these, they become half beats. But then, on top of that, do you do the usual thing that you had before, the da 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 da? No, you don't. You do something else. So you've got something that reminds you that it's Mephisto, but on top of that, you put something that is new. So if you played. Yes, and now maybe play it, but not too fast, the 2 together. And that's it's nice because it's slow. But when you play it fast, it goes now. Exactly. And then I thought that I'll give you a last little thing, and then after that I can answer to questions, and I can answer to questions maybe with examples from the piece if you got some questions. But the last thing I wanted to say, it's interesting that I started my piece by this tune, and actually at the end I use it only twice. Almost at the beginning, but that closes the piece. Sort of if you think, no, just the last beat. No, maybe you're right. Just a few, yeah. And so it appears only twice. There is a point that is worth thinking about is, I remember this talk about my dad. I don't know if all of you are like also visual art, but if you do, there's Malevich did almost a century ago a black square. It was just a square in black. It's almost the equivalent of the Cage Minutes of Silence. And from there starts the conceptual art in some way. Even if Malevich didn't continue that way, and a lot of people turn back from that. But it's like thinking that a concept, that it was something completely new to do a concept like that. But the truth is that in art, it's always there. So, for example, this theme that I called Mephisto at the beginning, but I was not Mephisto, that is very dissonant, that appears only twice. It's a bit like in these paintings, where you can find in classical paintings or Renaissance paintings, Italian paintings, you'll find in all there's a nice view of Venice, and on one little spot, there's a little red man. He's got a little, there's a man that has got a red shirt or something like that. And for the artist, he decided to put the little man with the red shirt because of the red. So it's completely abstract thought. It's not that it's new that in the 20th century or we invented suddenly concept that's red. It was there. There's no great artist ever that would not have thought about the color and the shape. But it was not only color and shape, it's everything together. It's the same for me. It's this is it works somehow because it's there only twice. And it closes, I find that it closes the music well, and if it was overused, it would just never work. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say, and if you've got questions, I'll be happy to answer. Anyone? No? Thank you. Thank you to look up.
What a nice way of summarizing. Here was a guy that took 2.5 years to write a 2.5-minute waltz, and here is the guy that took 2.5 minutes to play the 2.5 minutes. I think this absolutely brings together, okay, what was this about? Nimrod, thank you very much for the explanation. Luca, thank you very much for the illustration, and thank you very, very much for your presence.